What a gift and a joy to be gathered tonight. I welcome all of you who are here in person and those watching online. I'm Joanna Heriter. I'm one of the pastors here at Bethel College Mennonite Church, and it is our deep privilege to host this program honoring the life and legacy of Shirley King, whose music was such a gift to this congregation and this community and others for so many years. I want to express thanks to Christopher Shaw for organizing this event and playing the organ tonight. Also, thanks to Lorraine Carlson-Miller and Don Kerberg for being here to play. Francis Taves is running our sound, and thanks to all of you for being here to join in and help to make the music that we will all enjoy tonight. I didn't have the privilege of knowing Shirley personally, but I have heard that she was an amazing hostess, always bringing people together around good food and good music. And it strikes me that she is still doing just that as we have all gathered together to honor her, to celebrate her legacy, to worship God, and to make and enjoy music. So may we be blessed by this time together, and as we listen and as we sing, may we, as our closing hymn suggests, be lost in wonder, love, and praise.
I began organ lessons with Shirley King when I was a freshman at Bethel College and continued for several years after graduation. After having studied piano all through my childhood, I simply wanted to expand my keyboard skills beyond just piano. Now, Shirley was very clear that playing piano didn't automatically mean you could play organ. So she started her students off with The Method of Organ Playing by Harold Gleason. How many of you know this cover? And I felt like I was back in first grade all over again. Soon, however, she had us playing real organ literature that gradually introduced us to varied composers and styles and the organ's wide range of sounds and textures. Shirley gave strict instructions that we should not even touch a hymn for the first year of organ playing, not even familiar hymns. And it was from Shirley that I learned that playing, accompanying, and leading hymns is a very complex skill. The organist must consider a myriad of factors: how to play the bass line on the pedals and the tenor, alto, and soprano line on the keyboard, unless you rearrange it and play the melody on the pedals. How to articulate when one note repeats while at the same time smoothly continuing a line of moving notes. How to understand the relationship between tune and text, where to breathe, have the organ breathe along with the singers, what registrations to use, whether to vary registrations during the hymn, how to introduce the hymn, whether to play the whole hymn or just a part of it for the introduction, how to transition effectively between stanzas, how to determine whether to include any a cappella stanzas or an extra organ accompaniment or interlude between stanzas. And Shirley's students learned that all of these hymn-playing factors are in turn influenced by context, the group that is singing the hymn, the space in which they are singing, what kind of occasion it is, whether the hymn is familiar or new to the group, where it is placed within the service, whether the organist is collaborating with other musicians or a song leader. Now I know why Shirley didn't assign hymns for the first year. Shirley introduced her students to the world of organ music even beyond our individual lessons with her. She organized group recitals that placed beginners among more skilled students, fostering an atmosphere of respect and encouragement rather than competition or critique. She hosted meals for her students and master classes with other professional organists. She took us on field trips, organ crawls, to play other instruments, meet other organists, and visit organ builders. This included a trip to the Dobson Organ Company in Lake City, Iowa, which built the organ for the chapel in the Bethel College Administration Building. A sense of community among her students was still very tangible when a group of us gathered to play an alumni recital with Shirley on the Dobson organ during Bethel College Fall Festival in 2023. As a teacher, Shirley went beyond just focusing on musical notes and technique, though those were very important. She was interested in her students as whole persons who had hopes and fears and friendships. And she didn't hesitate to check in and offer encouragement or counsel about those things. I remember after one lesson, right over here on the organ bench, she mentioned that she had been observing my growing and yet still uncertain relationship with a particular young man. And then she went on to offer her unsolicited advice that if I knew what was good for me, I had better pursue him and keep at it. Her strong opinions may not have always been welcome or accurate, but that time she was right. When it came time for me to determine vocational direction and decide to go to graduate school, Shirley may have been disappointed that I, like many of her liberal arts interdisciplinary students, did not pursue a career in organ and church music. But she affirmed my decision to go to seminary, to become a musically literate pastor rather than a professional organist. And it was a choice that eventually brought me back to Bethel College Mennonite Church, where I had the privilege of serving as pastor for the final years that Shirley served here as organist. What a joy it was to collaborate with her as a colleague in planning and leading worship and music, to practice together the principles that she had taught me. Shirley was passionate in her belief that music is not only about the notes on the page or the pipes of the organ, but it is about people and about the world in which we live. It is a doorway to the heart and mind and soul. It is an entry into community and history, into faith and theology and worship. It even leads us into ethics and politics. I give thanks for the many, many ways that Shirley enriched our lives as a mentor and a colleague, and the legacy that she has given all of us to carry forward. Thank you to Chris also for modeling that and arranging for this program.
I call this Shirley King, Master of Good Intent. So we are in our weekly Bethel College music faculty meeting, March 11th, 1975. Give or take a couple days, give or take a couple months or a couple years. I mean, it's been over a half century. In 1975, I'm still a newbie at Bethel. What did I know? I knew this: Bethel College's organ instructor, Alice Lowen, was moving to Pennsylvania, and Harold Moyer, chair of the faculty, announced, "We have an application from Shirley Sprunger King for the part-time organ position, and it includes a glowing recommendation from Michael Palmer, the assistant conductor of the Atlanta Symphony." Palmer became the conductor of the Wichita Symphony in 1977, and Shirley its principal organist and harpsichordist. Regardless of when Shirley's tenure began at Bethel, it was the beginning of an unforgettable quarter century of collegiality and friendship between Shirley and me and among our families. Our friendship continued for another quarter century after we had physically drifted apart. You can bet Shirley had an early eye on the organ in the chapel, a saga that found completion in 1985 with the installation of the Dobson pipe organ. 1985 was also the 300th birthday of Johann Sebastian Bach, and we found ourselves, the BC Music students and faculty, courtesy of Shirley's hard work, performing a week-long Bach festival, including a performance of his coffee cantata at Druber's Daylight Donuts. Now, about the Decknadel Vandersmissen organ that is in Bethel College's museum, the Coffin Museum. If she didn't know about this instrument before she began her tenure here, it didn't take long, because in 1978, we had our first Decknadel trio. Shirley on the keyboard, Margaret Taves flute, and me on oboe. Through the years, the Decknadel trio or quartet or ensemble or consort included a variety of outstanding musicians. For most of its life, however, it was a quartet with Shirley on organ, harpsichord, and piano, Lorraine Carlson Miller flute and soprano, Dwight Beckham trumpet, and me on oboe and sometimes bassoon. In founding and nurturing the Decknadel groups, Shirley fostered a collegiality, and this is important, that allowed equal and often input of musical ideas from whoever was performing in the ensemble. Shared input of and investment of musical ideas creates a synergy that contributes to a musical outcome that is greater than its parts. Shirley, I think, intended for this synergy. Shirley operated by intent. Several tours of the upper Midwest, tours to the East Coast, West Coast, Florida, and programs all around Kansas didn't just happen. Shirley, if you're listening, what happened to the tour to the European ancestral lands of the Decknadel? Shirley intended that chamber music is not limited to faculty. She established a Camerata Musica, a student chamber music ensemble. The outcome? Well, a faculty guy like me and Shirley's outstanding Camerata Musica students got the pleasure of schlepping Bethel's harpsichord up and down the steps of Century 2 in Wichita so that these superior kids could show to Kansas music educators the beautiful role that chamber music can play in a liberal arts college. Who orchestrated the commissioning of compositions for the Decknadel Ensemble and Camerata Musica from the following composers: Augusta Reed Thomas, Charles Hogue, P.Q. Fahn, and of course, Harold Moyer? Shirley did this. Shirley accomplished all of this while being a full-time professor, chairing the music department, serving on faculty committees, acquiring the Dobson organ, assisting in organizing several major symposiums on the arts, theology, and community. She completed her DMA degree and completed an outstanding Fulbright fellowship to Argentina, bringing back 4 outstanding students that made Bethel College proud. Shirley made us all proud. Words alone cannot express my appreciation that she embraced the ideal that being rural in Kansas is not, cannot be, and should never be an excuse for foregoing outstanding musical performance and opportunities. It just isn't. That, my friends, is good intent. Now, for some lighter moments, in all his years of wonderful playing, did anybody ever hear Dwight Beckham hit a wrong note, even in a rehearsal? I didn't think so. Do you know that when we toured, Lorraine would not have a glass of wine? Can I say that? She wouldn't have a glass of wine until after the last concert. Did you know there's a nice bar in Bluffton that Dwight and I relaxed in after a concert there? On a Sunday in October, we played a concert at Topeka's Grace Episcopal Church when the temperature outside was 106 degrees in October. You know, there's a musical composition for piano, flute, trumpet, and bassoon that just fit our quartet. For sure, I have left out a lot about Shirley and the decnodal ensembles, but I know with certainty that I can ask this final question. Do you know how satisfying it is to look back on the years we were privileged to collaborate with Shirley on her sojourn at Bethel College? Thank you for hearing me.
My husband Phil and I met Shirley and Vernon 48 years ago at the back of this sanctuary in a Sunday school class. We considered ourselves best friends. We enjoyed Shirley's cooking, watched movies, had favorite restaurants, and took weekend trips together. On one of those trips to Northeast Kansas, Vernon parked the car, popped the trunk, took out a card table, and covered it with a tablecloth. Shirley unpacked a picnic basket of gourmet goodies. And there we sat in a parking lot, perhaps the only people ever to tailgate before visiting an art museum. We traveled to England, where Shirley insisted on visiting Elgar's home, having tea with her mentor organist, Sir Peter Herford, and attending a concert in St. Albans Cathedral. Vernon scared us all by biking solo halfway across England through some of the country's busiest cities. In 2024, Shirley and Vernon invited me to join them in Spain and Portugal. These memories of friendship are precious. Although Shirley and I had many qualities in common, she dedicated herself to working on what she considered my two greatest deficiencies. My lack of interest in cooking mystified her. Surely she could improve my culinary skills. She compiled recipes for me from magazines taken from websites. Yes, I know you prefer only 4 ingredients, and some of these have 6, she'd say, as she handed me a new batch of recipes to try out. We always landed in the kitchen when she visited. There she used her teaching skills, hoping I'd catch on to curry chicken, hot chicken salad, oatmeal pancakes, she even brought the ingredients for that, or one of the many pasta dishes we whipped up together. Shirley also tolerated the fact that I have no musical ability. I secretly thought she rather liked that fact, because once again she could teach, telling me what I needed to know before every concert, and after the event explaining in detail how it all went well or could certainly have been improved. We shared organizational skills and strong personalities, but there was never any competition between us, only fun and love. After Phil's death, before every visit, Vernon texted me, reminding me to create a to-do list for him. And when he arrived, he was amazing, putting his skills to work. He swept my garage and blew leaves off my porch. He changed light bulbs, furnace filters, and the oil in my car. He fixed electrical sockets. He installed 3 new toilets and cleaned a clogged drain. And smart man that he is, unlike Shirley, Vernon never tried to teach me any of those skills. Doers, helpers, givers. Those are words that describe Shirley and Vernon. They gave to others in MCC units in Cincinnati, California, Atlanta, and Haiti. Shirley mentored students planning their weddings, showing interest in their lives long after college. She walked with those who mourned, playing their loved ones' memorial services. She always remembered to call or send a note on days that she knew you would grieve, a parent's or spouse's birthday or death date. Food was Shirley's language of love, bringing friends to her table for conversation and laughter, organizing the food for family reunions, celebrating birthdays and anniversaries, feeding the entire Greencroft staff in Goshen. Shirley's refrigerator was always full. Her heart was always open. Vernon helped others by building and repairing. His home repair skills helped low-income families through the Chirpa program in Tucson. Habitat for Humanity sought his talents in Goshen, and children at Camp Friedenswald enjoy the playground that he built for them. We all look for a best friend, a friend who will always be there. Phil and I found that in Shirley and Vernon. May each of you find that too. And more importantly, may each of us be that friend.